Hello and welcome to the big picture. The Indian Navy is in a state of turmoil. After having witnessed a series of submarine accidents, 10 in the last 7 months, the Navy Chief Admiral D.K. Joshi put in his papers yesterday accepting moral responsibility. He is the first naval chief to have resigned. The government has accepted it and is in the process of finding a new chief. The latest incident was involving INS Sindhu Ratna, in which 2 Navy men have died and some more injured. Many questions have cropped up following the spate of incidents, worst of which was INS Sindhu Rakshak in August last year, in which 18 men died. Questions about the state of the Indian Navy, its capability, the civilian and military relationship, and also the responsibility of the political class are all matters of serious concern. How can the Indian Navy be rescued? We will discuss all this with Yogendra Narain, former Defence Secretary, Government of India, Air Vice Marshal retired Kapil, Defence Analyst, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, Senior Fellow at the National Maritime Foundation, and Saikat Datta, Editor National Security at the Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Narain, I would like to come to you first. This is the first time a Navy Chief has resigned accepting moral responsibility. There are many aspects to this, many ways of looking at this. But do you think that this is a healthy sign when someone takes moral responsibility and resigns?
I think it's a very healthy sign. It will be good for the health of the entire country, including the defense forces. And he's really shown his true soldier-like spirit in submitting his resignation. I respect him for what he has done, because he has taken up moral responsibility for the incidents that occurred. It was unfortunate. He is an excellent officer by all counts, very disciplined officer, enforcing strict discipline in the forces. But these incidents did happen.
Yes, there are many of them,
He may not have resigned. I mean, the immediate person who was responsible was the Western Command Chief.
Yes.
But I really appreciate and salute Mr. Joshi for what he has done in submitting his resignation.
Okay, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, it's very interesting that many people, in fact, admire and appreciate the courage shown by the Navy Chief by accepting moral responsibility. But it's also very curious that people see a design in the way the Government of India accepted the resignation with such alacrity. Do you think that these doubts being expressed about why Government of India should have accepted the resignation, how do you look at this?
I think you're right on that, Girish, that the general sense yesterday, after this very unprecedented step taken by Admiral Joshi, the fact that the government chose to accept it in such a swift manner, I will only describe it as intriguing at this stage, because a service chief putting in his papers for a democracy like India is a very, very major development. And the question that is being asked is, was there any consultation about this issue, or is it that the government of the day had already come to a decision that Admiral Joshi must go? Why I'm raising this is that in the past we have had some precedent. When the Honorable President, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, was the Defence Minister, there was a similar instance. And at that time,
Admiral
Arun Prakash, the government of the day, the highest levels of the political leadership, consulted. Perhaps, I'm not aware, maybe even senior opposition leaders were consulted about the enormity of the step. And I gather again from information in the public domain that then Defence Minister Honorable Pranab Mukherjee had advised the Admiral, then Arun Prakash, not to take this step. So because of that, I think those who follow these developments closely have, I think, been intrigued by this. And I think that is something which I'm sure in coming days is going to receive a lot of attention, because Admiral Joshi has taken a very principled position, and it's a case of saying that both institutional and moral responsibility. And he has set a very fine example, because in the last 24 hours, everyone remembers the same thing, that after former Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri resigned in 1956 because of a train accident in Tamil Nadu when he was the railway minister, no senior official or leader in India has accepted this kind of moral and institutional responsibility and shown integrity of this nature. So I think these are issues that the country is definitely pondering over, if I may put it that way.
Air Marshal Kaki, are you also intrigued? Or you think, let us look at it from the other point of view, that accepting moral responsibility, when there has been this spate of incidents, who should take responsibility for it, if not the Navy chief? And why this intrigue, sense of intrigue, or in some quarters even outrage about the resignation being accepted?
No, I think you put it very well, Girish. Yes, of course, there is a sense of intrigue all of us have. Should his resignation have been accepted? My simple answer is no. And Uday has already given the precedent of when Mr. Pranab Mukherjee was the Raksha Mantri. Incidentally, it was not one incident, there were 5 incidents during that period, lesser period, 5 incidents. This is a 7-month period and there are 9 incidents, including yesterday. Incidents. So when you look at the incidents, I think we are moving more into the aspect of resignation and whether this needed to be accepted or not. There is a fundamental issue which needs to be tackled. Navy is not modernized. Navy's strength of submarines.
We will come to that. We will come to that aspect.
Let me come to
that aspect.
Yeah, later. This issue, he has been given.
Don't you think Don't you think the government would have faced criticism if no action had been taken?
Of course, and this is nothing. I to put it very bluntly, this is deflecting some arrows which may come towards the government. And D.K. Joshi is a good fall guy and he's a good gentleman. He said, I will go. But I also need to flag the issue that during the commanders' conference, some signals were conveyed by the Raksha Mantri that Navy needs to ensure that the assets are operated safely, alluding to the previous incidents that had taken place. Inaugurating the Defence Expo just the other day.
Yes.
He once again said, I don't know whether I can give 100% certification to the Navy.
So he has been showing his disappointment with
this is the point I'm trying to make, Girish. You can show disappointment. I can be disappointed with Girish if Girish doesn't deliver in the studio. But may I also ask myself the question, if I give you a studio which is non-functional and you are not able to deliver, who takes the fault? You may take the fault, but I need to take the fault as well. That's the point.
We will come to that aspect of, who should take responsibility, whether the political class needs to take responsibility. Let me go to Saikat. Saikat, if I'm asking you, as a representative of the media, the way the media has taken this entire issue is also quite intriguing, in the sense that if there have been many questions asked by the media about the spate of incidents and mishaps which has been happening in the last several months and also last several years, but when government accepts this resignation, the media questions why the government is accepting the resignation. Don't you think there is a dichotomy in the way the media behaves in these kind of situations?
Well, Girish, we have seen the media act in a dichotomous manner in earlier incidents. But I just want to frame this answer with a couple of points. For example, Commodore Uday Bhaskar mentioned the incident of Admiral Arun Prakash. I think it will be extremely erroneous to compare the Admiral Arun Prakash incident with this incident. In the earlier case, it wasn't a case of somebody taking moral responsibility, it was a case of somebody not taking moral responsibility until a newspaper exposed some incidents. In this case, here is a man who has completely taken moral responsibility, but if we are to believe that the Ministry of Defence, the armed services are completely have civilian control, then I see the dichotomy which is working out like this, that there is civilian responsibility, there is civilian control as far as the control bit is concerned, but the moment it comes to the question of who is responsible, the responsibility is very conveniently shifted off to the service chief, and the civilian control refuses to take that responsibility. No defense secretary ever puts in his papers, no defense minister ever puts in his papers, unless of course you end up losing a war like we did in 1962. So this shows a great political failure on part of the defense minister and the ministry, which has led to matters such a pass, and this is what is being played out in the media right now.
So you don't see a problem with the way the media. You see, apparently the media and this Navy chief who has just quit, there has been conflict between with the media also. With the Navy chief has had conflict with the media also, and media has been questioning him quite some time. And now when he resigns for something, the media is now taking the stand that why should they have accepted the resignation?
No, let me put it this way, that the media is, first of all, even if they have confrontation with the Navy chief, the media should also ask certain other questions, that who decides procurement, who decides policy issues, who controls the money. If the money is not being controlled by the naval chief and he is given 25 or 30-year-old leaky boats, what can this man really do? And that is a question that really needs to be introspected in the media.
Okay, Mr. Narain, coming to the civilian military relationship. Now, it's both Kapil Kak and Saikat have pointed out the responsibility of the civilian section when such things happen. Don't you think they have not said it in so many words, but ultimately how much is the defense secretary responsible for it, and then we have to go to the top of as far as the defense minister is concerned.
Let me come to the question which he raised about leaky boats and not enough finances. See, after the Kargil war took place, a group of ministers was set up and a report was given by Mr. K. Subramaniam on defense reforms. And from that date onwards, when we set up this Defense Acquisition Council, and we set up a Defense Procurement Board in which all the vice chiefs and the chiefs with the Defense Minister, the three chiefs sit in the Defense Acquisition Council. They recommend what should be procured and what should not be procured. And the Navy chief has never complained about shortage of funds. You see, even when I was there in my tenure, it was the Navy which never complained about. And they got all the funds required, and all the procurements were done as requested by them. So now that this Defense Acquisition Council has come up now to say that the leaking boats were there, or the procurement is not in place, or shortage of funds, I would not agree with that.
The criticism is that the modernization process, the upgradation process has not been taken up in time. There have been several delays because of which the Navy, the Navy is forced to use these kind of submarines, which should have been replaced. These are the criticisms.
Girish, the capital budget of the Defense Ministry has been entirely spent, except for 4,000 or 5,000 crores. Out of the 85,000 crores that was given last year. It has been entirely spent. For the maintenance, you get full funds as required. And I don't think there is a shortage of procurement of the right type of equipment or boats, etc. I would like to raise one point, that is about the maintenance of these submarines or the corvettes and other ships. What is lacking there, whether it's the engineering skills or the training not being given,
or the management skills,
because you see, once the money is allocated and it is spent in accordance with the Defense Acquisition Council or the Defense Procurement Board, in which all the chiefs sit and the vice chiefs sit, after that, to still say that there is
putting the onus on the civilian thing is you don't agree with that?
I don't agree with
that. Okay. Saikat, okay. Uday, Bhaskar, I'll come to you. Saikat wants to react. Saikat, yes, quickly.
Just I wanted to add that I would like to know who chairs the Defense Acquisition Council. And secondly, it's not a question about money. It's a question of, if you have 25-year-old leaky boats, no matter how much maintenance you do, it's still not going to prevent it from sinking when the time is right.
Anyway,
but tell me one thing, when Admiral Gorshkov was commissioned after a refit and the full money was given, in fact, thrice the original contract, that money was given.
That is incorrect.
where was this shortage of funds? I mean, how
That
do you
is
blame that?
incorrect.
Let me get Commodore Uday Bhaskar. Yes, Uday Bhaskar. I'll come to you, Kapil, Mr. Kapil Kam. Yes, Uday.
Girish, 3 quick points if I may.
Yes.
One is I do want to respond to Saikat's observation and I hope it does not deflect us from what we are here to discuss this evening. One is that when I recalled the earlier instance when Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, the Honorable President, was the Defence Minister, it was about what I am aware of as a consultative process within the government. And the correspondence from that incident, which involved Admiral Prakash, to where we are now today, is that at that time, if you see what Admiral Prakash had said, the events at that time were casting aspersions on the image of the service. Again, he took a very principled position, and it's a different matter that the resignation was not accepted. And I do want to add that Saikat, regrettably at this point, represented the publication that seemed to be waging the equivalent of a certain vendetta, but I don't want to raise that just because it will deflect our discussion.
Okay, you made your point. Now let us. I want you to respond to what Mr. Yogendra Narain has said.
I think what Mr. Narain has said, he's a very experienced defense secretary and a civil servant. I think the big picture is, it is not about the fact that only 4 to 5,000 crores have not been spent in the capital budget. It is about a trend. And he recalls very well, he was defense secretary in the NDA government when we had the Kargil war, the post-Kargil review committee, the group of ministers, and certain initiatives were being identified. But by the time you come to UPA 1 and UPA 2, what is dismaying is that across the board, over a 10-year period, the planning for the modernization of major platforms in the Army, Navy, Air Force have not received appropriate attention. And this brings us back to the point Saikat was making earlier. Consequently, the Indian Army still does not have an artillery gun. We are talking about what happened post-Bofors. The Navy does not have new submarines because we are dealing with the post-HDW complexities that have permeated the system. And as far as the Air Force is concerned, my colleague Kapil knows better that whether it is the trainer aircraft or the fighter, the Indian Air Force today is handicapped in terms of its principal platforms. So that I think is the larger issue which needs to be addressed now, and which is why I think that question that everybody is asking, will the buck stop with Admiral Joshi?
No.
There are very large and complex issues that impact national security.
Uday, you have
we
to
are
answer.
talking about a country where the legislature has not, in the last 10 years, had an informed and objective debate on the military. These are realities. This is not about finger pointing or a blame game, but to say that we must ponder very objectively on some of these very serious issues. That is what I was trying to identify.
Uday, can you hear me now? Uday, can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I'll go back to Uday, but I wanted him to answer one of the points which was made by Mr. Yogendra Narain. I'll go back to him. Yes, you wanted to react earlier to what Mr. Narain says.
My bulk of what I wanted to say, Uday has already addressed. First, a clarification. Mr. Yogendra Narain rightly said, in terms of budgetary exercises year to year, there's no problem. Monies are being spent.
Do you have any problem with Mr. Narain's point?
I'm just coming to that.
He said that the Navy chief has not made any complaints, has not complained about the lack of funds.
No, he's talking about a budgetary year. If you were to ask the 3 chiefs together, and they have sent it at various fora over the years, collectively, individually to the minister, that their modernization is lacking. I'll give you an example. Mention was made, the budget.
Who is responsible for this modernization lacking? Because Mr. Narain says that the funds have been given, there is no lack of funds.
Excuse me, that's not factually right. For this calendar year, the financial year, 7,875 crores out of capital budget, which Mr. Narain talked about as modernization, have been transferred to the revenue budget. This is done by the interim budget presented by Mr. Chief P. Chidambaram. I'm talking about this year. But that is not what this whole issue is about.
This is not a problem of this year.
I'm talking about a perspective.
Yes.
Why have we allowed the submarine arm to reduce to 15 when China has 55 submarines? Do you know the threat that India faces
Let us,
from
we
these...
will not, sir, this is not a discussion
No,
about the threat perception.
Let me go one by
Yes.
one. Second point. Nowhere in the world, most importantly Russia, which manufactures these submarines, are they operated beyond 25 years. Ours have gone beyond 25, now you are extending their life. And this is what Saikat has very rightly talked about, the leaky part.
Right.
It will leak because it's more than 25 years. The third point, more critical, you're talking about subs now. I remember Barkha Datta and others slamming me on television when MiG-21s used to fly out of the skies. The MiG-21s have finished their operational and technical life, you know when? 10 years ago. And now you have given them life to last on until 2020. We have done nothing. Then you say, I have given revenue budget, I have given capital budget, I have given MiG-21s which don't need to fly, and therefore if it falls out, Air Chief must resign.
This capital budget being shifted to revenue budget obviously was part of the exercise of the finance minister to plug the deficit.
Political accountability,
Yes,
Girish,
Mr. Narain, I want you
very
to respond to
important.
this.
Very important.
I want you to respond to his saying that, you know, what you say that there's been enough funds, but he says that enough funds have not been given. The submarines have outlasted their life and they're still continued. So if you are saying that enough funds have been given, not just now, but in the years in the past also. But Commodore, but Uday Bhaskar says the last 10 years there has been a problem with this government. Would you agree with that?
You see, Girish, I think I must go back to this point that after the Kargil war and when the reforms were carried out, we have now set up a Chief of Integrated Defence Staff also.
Right.
He vets the budgets of all the three wings, and he after his analysis, he puts up the recommendations to the government that these are the budgets that should be given to each wing. Now, what has happened is that we have ourselves downgraded the importance of Chief of Integrated Defence Staff. We are not consulting him. None of the three chiefs go according to the recommendations of the Chief of Integrated Defence Staff. We are belittling our own reform. Secondly, what Mr.
So what is the effect of that?
So the effect is that this balanced budget, you see, no country gives unlimited.
Absolutely.
Money. Even USA is now pruning its defense forces. There is a limited budget which is based on the revenues. If you say that even this limited budget, we cannot fend for everything, I agree. I mean, in the sense that there is a limited budget. Every country has a limited budget for every department.
Right.
Now the question is, if Mr. Kak says that MiG-21's life was extended,
same case with the submarines.
I would be very happy if the Air Force Chief had said, no, we don't need these refits or modernization or upgradation. What has happened with Sindhu Rakshak and the Sindhu Ratn? They were upgraded.
Right.
And for 6 months they went on upgrading it. And suddenly these incidents happened. So have we spent the wrong type of money on the wrong type of actions?
I think that's the important point. Commodore Uday Bhaskar, that is the point, you know. On the one hand, the Navy says that, you know, we have not been given the money, whatever we needed. On the other hand, the point raised by Mr. Yogendra Narain is quite a valid point which needs an answer.
No, sure. I think it merits an answer. And I think, you know, the sort of big picture again is that because the armed forces do not receive the induction of modern platforms in the appropriate time frame, they are forced to go through the upgrade route and use the old platform. Now, an old platform has a limited shelf life in terms of the material status. At the end of the day, each service chief is also responsible for the military capacity that his arm provides to the larger national lattice.
Right.
Whether it is the army, the navy or the air force.
Absolutely.
So the classic example is Kargil, when the army chief of the day went on record to say that we are inadequate in many areas, but yet the Indian army will do everything that it needs to do in terms of dealing with the challenge. So what did the country do? You paid price in blood.
No,
the entire operation was successful, but at a very heavy cost. So that is the point.
No, Uday, my point is, when you say that the chiefs have to take responsibility, in this case, in this last, in the tenure of the present chief, or rather the chief who has resigned, DK Joshi, has he raised these kind of issues? Has he raised these kind of issues? Can he now say that I have raised these kind of issues, but it was not done? And can he take that stand now?
Well, I think, Girish, even as I was coming towards your show,
Yeah.
I heard that there was some breaking news on television channels which spoke about Admiral Joshi having apprised the Honorable Defence Minister about the status of the submarine fleet and saying, what can I do if I do not get the kind of support, or the institution of the service does not get the kind of enabling, empathetic support from the Ministry of Defence? I'm sure there will be more in the public domain over the next 24 hours. But my sense is every chief, going back to the last 10 to 12 years that I'm aware of, have in personal communication to the Honorable Defence Minister, apprised him about the status of the material inventory. And I regret to say, Girish, let me say this in public today, the few interviews I have done with retired service chiefs and senior bureaucrats like Mr. Yogendra, Narain, I gather that the service chiefs, when they write to the Honorable Minister, do not even get an acknowledgement or a reply about these serious issues. These are very, very serious issues.
This is a very serious issue. Yes, Saikat.
Well,
Saikat, we are running out of time.
I'll quickly say this. I am hearing both somebody as respected as Mr. Yogendra Narain, and I'm hearing people from the service, and I find misrepresentation happening on both sides. When Mr. Yogendra Narain talks about the CISC, what he quietly or probably knowingly evades the point is the Kargil Review Committee had asked for us Chief of Defence Staff. Instead, we have a stopgap arrangement, and the Kargil Review Committee recommendations which he is talking about was never implemented. So in effect, he is saying that while he was Secretary to the Government of India, he should actually follow the orders and recommendations of a Joint Secretary who is 2 rungs below him. That will never work in the services. And as far as I'm hearing the same kind of misrepresentation from people who are from the services, where if we as journalists go and talk about how arms dealers had full access and had close proximity to serving naval chiefs, writing about it and exposing it as vendetta. So unless you resolve and start looking at the stark truth, we'll never get to the bottom.
I think you made a point very effective. I want a quick response from you and Kapil Kar before
on this point he raised, I was not mentioning CISC when I mentioned. I was mentioning Chief of Integrated Defence Staff, which was set up after the post-Kargil reform recommendations were set up.
Was never recommended.
This is functioning.
But it is not functioning as effectively as it should be. You say that
this is functioning very effectively.
It is not being effective because this was never recommended by the Kargil Review Committee.
Chiefs either.
The Kargil Review Committee never recommended this.
No, but anyway.
I think Uday Bhaskar can write about that, whether they recommended this or not.
Yes, very quickly, last word.
The issue really is systemic modernization reform of the services. And this can't happen piece by piece, case by case basis. Secondly, you have to look at the challenges that lie ahead. In the specific case of the Navy, I think it's time that there is a high-powered committee appointed immediately by the Ministry of Defence in concurrence with the Naval Headquarters, with officiating CNS in picture, as to what are the specific problems of old fleet which need to be resolved.
I think
like we did for the Air Force in the 70s when we had accidents, LaFontaine Committee sat and made major reforms by way of change. I think that's what we need to do.
I think on that note, we need to end that positive note that something, the bigger picture needs to be looked at, and as Air Marshal Kak suggests, hopefully we will see some kind of a committee being set up like that. But we hope that the morale of the Indian Navy doesn't get affected by all what is happening. Thanks to all my guests, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, Saikat Datta, Yogendra Narain and Air Marshal Kapil Kak. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in Big Picture same time tomorrow.